for people that, I think there's some people doing some maths tuition and couldn't make the session. So I'm going to deliver this. I don't think it's going to take a full hour. I think possibly 20 minutes to half an hour is maximum, maybe even less. So let's see without further ado. So the reason that I thought a revision session would be a good idea is because we haven't really touched on paper 2 for a long time. So one of the mocks that you're going to be completing is the early Elizabethan mock, which is half of paper 2. So the other half of paper 2 is, of course, superpower relations, which you probably know as the Cold War, which you're studying at the moment. But obviously you haven't completed the Cold War component, so you can't do a full paper for paper 2. So half of paper 2, which is early Elizabethan England, I'm going to go through the skills, and there's only 3 questions, which is why I don't think this session will take too long. I'm going to share the document which I've created into your Google Classrooms for you as well. All right. So, yeah, your paper is in 2 sections that examine the period study in the British depth study. And your British depth study is early Elizabethan England. Okay. They each count for 20% of your history assessment. So 20% of your final history grade. Okay. So there are only 3 questions for early Elizabethan England, and you have around 55 minutes to complete that in your exam. All right. So this will give you a few moments for checking your answers at the end. Now, your first question is a describe 2 features question. All right. It's 4 marks. So in all, just so you know, for paper 2, there's 64 marks. Now, as we're only looking at one half of that today, this is 32 marks. Okay. All right. So the first question is pretty low stakes. It's a 4-mark question. It's a nice, easy way to get some marks. Okay. So you're going to be given a describe 2 features question. All right. So you have to write a few lines about each feature. So really, this should take no more than 5 minutes. Okay. It's only worth 4 marks. So you've got to keep your answers brief and try not to add too much information. Really, what you have to identify is one feature, explain it, then you identify another feature and you explain it again. Okay. So an example question is this here. Okay, so describe 2 features of the theatre in early Elizabethan England. Okay, so feature 1, Elizabeth had banned religious plays to stop Protestants and Catholics from having religious arguments. This meant that everyone could relax and enjoy the theatre together. I'd actually add a little bit more to this. Okay, so many plays focused on histories rather than Bible stories. Okay, so that would be a nice example there. Okay, now feature 2 of Elizabethan theatres. Now, guys, by the way, if you get a question on Elizabethan theatre, do not mention Shakespeare. Whatever you do not mention Shakespeare. It's not worth you mentioning Shakespeare, because Shakespeare only comes up in the, well, after your course is finished. So your course starts in 1558. Okay, it ends in 1588. Ergo, there is literally no point in writing about William Shakespeare, because he wrote his plays in the second half of Elizabeth's reign, which we do not study. So you won't get any credit for those answers. Okay, don't write anything about Shakespeare. So feature 2, both the rich and the poor could afford to attend the theatre. That is definitely true. However, so that's something we identified. However, the poor would have to stand, and the rich could afford more expensive seating. The richest people would sit in the gallery, which didn't have a good view of the stage, but it enhanced their status. And you could add a little bit more detail, just a little bit more detail. So, you know, the poor had to stand, which was a cheaper seat. Okay, so you could just say you didn't have to pay as much. Well, it's not a seat, is it? It's a cheaper part of the theatre. Okay, so you see, it's just basically, all right, my advice is identify and explain. You identify a feature and explain it briefly. So identify and explain. So this is, well, I call it like a gimme question. Okay, they're giving you that nice and easy. Now, that's the mark scheme there, just in case you wanted to see how your answers should or could, yeah, be could be created. So there we go. All right, there we go. And welcome to Kira. Okay, Kira. So by the way, I'm recording this, Kira. So don't worry, you've missed the first question bit, but don't worry about that. Okay, now, guys, explain why. An explain why question. So this is question 1B. So there's 3 questions. Your second question is a 12-mark question. Now you have to spend a bit more time on this. I'd say spend around 18 minutes. Okay. So you've got to really, really focus on time. You have to focus on time. So when you're writing your answer to this, make sure that you focus on time. So yeah, allow 18 to 20 minutes maximum, but I'd really rather you kept it at 18 to write your answer. Now you're going to be given 2 stimulus points. All right. 2 stimulus points. And these stimulus points are prompts. So you don't have to write about them. It says you may, but it's there to help your memory. So I would generally use them, to be honest, unless you don't have a clue. If you don't know anything about this answer, you don't know what those points are, and you do know other things, that's when you wouldn't use them. But as a rule of thumb, should we say, it's preferable that you do use these stimulus points. So in this case, the native Algonquins, the damage to the ship, the Tiger. So always to remember to add in a new point of your own as well. And the way I'd phrase that is right from my own knowledge. So you write, it's basically 3 you can think of it as 3 paragraphs or 3 points. You should probably write a little bit more than 3 paragraphs, but 3 points. So 2 stimulus points and from my own knowledge. And you have to stay focused, okay? So explain why Raleigh's first colony in Virginia failed. That's your focus, okay? So this does not mean that you should try to fill all the space. So yeah, in your booklet, you're going to be given, I think, 3 or 4 sides to write this answer. You don't have to fill the whole space, okay? You just write what you feel is adequate for that answer. And it should be like basically 3 detailed points. And when I say detailed, that doesn't mean you write loads and loads of stuff. It means that you use the correct amount of detail, precise detail. So I'll give you an example. You will spend, okay? You will spend. So spend equals statistics, places, events, names, and dates. That's what you need to explain. And this is the information. You'll need that information to explain your points. So this is the question we've got. Explain why Raleigh's first colony in Virginia failed. You may use the following in your answer. Okay, the native Algonquins, the damage to the ship, the Tiger. You must use information of your own. Well, and you can see this is the mark scheme here. Okay, so you don't want to be here 1 to 3 marks, a simple generalized answer. You don't want that. Limited knowledge. You don't want that. You want to be in this bracket here, don't you? 10 to 12. Okay, so an analytical explanation is given, which is directed consistently at the conceptual focus of the question, and it's coherent, sustained, logically structured, nice and organized, using connectives. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, moreover, however, consequently. Use your connectives, guys. I would definitely use your connectives. Accurate and relevant information is precisely selected, okay? Precisely selected, you've got your spend there. Spend is going to help you pass your exam. So I've got ChatGPT to churn out an answer. So let's see how good it is. Already we can see we've got these lovely connectives here. Right, lovely connectives. And we've got a nice focused start. So Raleigh's first colony in Virginia failed for several reasons. And look, and now it's going to be explained. And look, firstly, secondly, and from my own knowledge. So this looks like a really well-structured response. So if I was marking this, I think, this person's been taught well. Their teachers taught them these skills. They definitely know how to construct their answer in an organizational fashion. Now, let's see if the knowledge is there. So firstly, the native Algonquin tribe in the area was hostile towards new settlers and resisted their attempts to establish a colony. The Algonquins were wary of the newcomers and their intentions and were concerned about the impact they would have on their land and way of life. Now, this is a specific detail here. Chief Wingina, although initially friendly, distrusted the settlers because of the diseases they carried, which they did not understand. So you think about it, these Native Americans didn't understand that disease were caused by germs. They thought it was witchcraft. So he thought that the settlers were practicing witchcraft and had an attack on the settlers, which backfired, leading to his own death. Having the local tribe be so hostile was a definite cause for failure. So it's a nice look. What ChatGPT has done there is come back and it's focused. It's focused on the answers. That's really good. Secondly, another factor for the failure of Raleigh's first expedition to Virginia was the fact the ship carried supplies and colonies to the new settlements. The Tiger. So look, we've got sort of fly my eye there. Right. Okay. The Tiger, which is the name of the ship, was damaged during a storm on the journey. Well, this sounds like some specific information here. It sounds like an event that's been described and explained. The damage left the settlers without sufficient resources and supplies to sustain themselves in the new colony. Raleigh had organised for the bows of the ship to have grains in them. The damage to these grains made the settlers dependent upon them, causing friction with Chief Wingina. So rather than them upon the native tribes. Okay, I think that would be better. So, causing friction with Chief Windjammer. Now look, last paragraph, okay? From my own knowledge, there were other factors which contributed to the failure of the colony, such as disease, lack of leadership, and disputes amongst the settlers. Raleigh did not attend the expedition himself, and the class differences between the farmers and the settlers and the nobles caused significant friction. There was an expectation that Virginia would be gold rich like the Spanish Empire. Okay, when this was not true, there was much discontent. These rich lords had not travelled across the world to farm after all, and this made settlers, who were farmers, very resentful of them. The harsh living conditions in the new land and the lack of food and resources put immense strain on the settlers. It made it difficult for them to survive. Additionally, the lack of a clear leader or plan for the colony made it difficult for the settlers to work together and make decisions. Full stop. So there we go. I think this is a nice answer. It's definitely in the 10 to 12 bracket. Okay. I think there's precise information. I think it's logically structured. You've got some nice connectives used there. We've got a good bit of spend. I think this is a good answer. A nice, solid 10 to 12 mark answer. Now, guys, see, look, 11 minutes and we're almost through the session. We've just got one last question to focus on, all right? One last question to focus on. So this question is the how far do you agree question. Now, this is really important. This question is worth half your marks of the whole depth study, i.e. Elizabethan England. So make sure you've kept half an hour to answer it. Now, if you're a slow writer, guys, if you're very slow at writing, like complete this first, okay? Complete these first. So just so you know, you have two options, okay? You have two options and you choose one. You don't answer both. All right, now, before you decide which answer, be clear what the statement is about, what concept and what topic of information you need to respond, because there's going to be one answer you're going to have a preference to. There's always one answer which you know more about, okay? So you can have parts to prompt you as well, okay? So the statements could be about cause, significance, consequence, change, continuity, similarity or difference, all right? And it's a good idea to practice during revision, practice identifying the concept focus of those statements, okay? So you can basically break down the question, all right? You can break down the question. So you could do this with everyday examples and test one another. The bus was late because it broke down. Now this equals a statement about cause, okay? So the bus broke down as a result of poor maintenance. Well, that is a statement about consequence, all right? The bus service has improved recently. That's a statement about change, okay? So you need to really focus. Is it about change? Is it about consequence? Is it about cause, all right? So you must make a judgment, i.e. arrive to a conclusion on how far you agree. Now, you don't completely agree. You don't completely agree. Remember, there's a range of different responses that you could give. You could mostly agree. You can agree to an extent. You can partially agree. You can somewhat agree. Oh, and vice versa. You can like mostly disagree, somewhat disagree. Okay, so remember, you've got to have a spectrum of your answer, and please write that in. You know, therefore, I mostly disagree. Therefore, I somewhat agree. Okay, you must have a nice conclusion, a nice developed conclusion. So, really, in your essay, what you've got to do, right? You've got to like come up for when you're arguing. On one hand, you've got arguments which are kind of for, and then arguments that are against. Okay, and then you come to a conclusion. So, in conclusion, evaluating this, and it's really good to write the words whilst, almost, and despite, because you write a really nice balanced conclusion there. And the conclusion is when most students will arrive to a judgment. If you don't arrive to a judgment, you just can't get very many marks, okay? The conclusion will save your essay, yeah? Trust me, it will save your essay, okay? So if you don't write a conclusion, you're kind of like throwing so many marks away. You must come to a judgment. You must arrive to a judgment. It's really important. The examiner is looking for a judgment. Do you mostly agree? Do you mostly disagree? Do you somewhat disagree? And really, a lot of students will kind of find that balanced judgment in their conclusion. So it's really important that you write a conclusion. It's really important that you argue on both sides and have balance in your essay. It's really important that you use connectives, okay, and precise details that you spend, okay, that you spend. So, which you know is statistics, places, events, names, and dates. So look, here's a nice question. Drake's most significant achievement in the years 1558 to 1588 was the raid on Cadiz. Now, that's a brilliant question because Sir Francis Drake was a very, very significant man and he did a lot of great things. So I'm just going to give you an example, okay, of some of the great things that he did. All right, that fly, I got it right. Okay, Right, so that fly was really annoying me, sorry. Okay, so Sir Francis Drake circumnavigated the world, all right, between 1577 and 1580. He took a lot of silver and a lot of gold from the Spanish Empire. He also was able to trade in the Far East and get spices, and he brought back a 6,000% profit. So that was really, really good. Now you can see from the stimulus points here, the singeing of the King's beard. Well, you should know that in 1587, he delayed the Spanish Armada. He was also a great privateer, stealing much booty, as it was called, from Spanish ships, many goods from Spanish ships. So again, the mark scheme is quite similar to the 12 marker for a 16 marker. So if you look, a simple or generalized answer, you don't want to be in that 1 to 4. You want to be down here in 13 to 16. You want an analytical explanation, which has reasoning. It's got to be coherent. It's got to be focused on the question. It's logically structured. Use your connectives. You're always told in English to use connectives, and I assume they call them connectives in English. So like firstly, secondly, thirdly, however, moreover, consequently, on the other hand, conversely, those kind of words are really, really good. They show shifts in arguments, all right? So you need to use accurate and relevant information, okay, precise information, your spend, okay, so statistics, places, events, names, and dates. And your criteria for judgment are justified, all right? So, when you come to your conclusion, somewhat, mostly, you've got some like justified criteria to back it up, some justified arguments. That's really important, okay? It's really important that you justify yourself. So here we go. Here is an answer written by ChatGPT again, okay, on this question. So, what was basically Sir Francis Drake's greatest accomplishment? Yeah. Okay. What was his most significant? So this is a significance question. All right. So which is the most significant of all his accomplishments? So Sir Francis Drake was an English privateer and navigator who was active during the Elizabethan era. He was one of the first English sailors to embark on a voyage around the world and is considered a hero in England for his maritime exploits. In this essay, I will evaluate the statement that Drake's most significant achievement in the years 1558 to 1588 was the raid on Cadiz. So look, you wouldn't write main body in the introduction, but I'm just showing you that this is a 3-part essay, okay? Introduction, main body, and conclusion. Don't write that in your final answer, but in this model, I've made sure ChatGPT has shown you that you're writing a 3-part question. So it is true that the raid on Cadiz was a significant achievement for Drake, and demonstrated his ability as a naval commander. During the raid, Drake and his fleet successfully destroyed several Spanish ships and caused significant damage to the port of Cadiz. This event, known as the singeing of the King's beard, was a blow to the Spanish Armada and boosted English morale. However, Drake's achievements go far beyond Cadiz. His role as a privateer during this time period was also significant. And by the way, you can see there was a connective there at the beginning. However, right, as a privateer, Drake was authorized by the English crown to attack Spanish ships and colonies, and he did this with great success. He made several voyages to the New World, capturing treasure ships and establishing England as a major player in the Atlantic trade. Now, there could be some more specific details there. What Spanish ships did he steal from? There's some big names out there, okay, which you can revise. Now, Drake's most significant achievement, so look, okay, clearly on the significance question, we're getting an argument which is going the other way. However, it was arguably his circumnavigation of the world between 1577 and 1580. We've got some precise information there. We've got some dates, haven't we? He was the first Englishman to complete a voyage around the world, and his expedition was a major milestone in the history of navigation and exploration. The information and maps Drake brought back from his voyage were instrumental to further English explorations and helped to establish England as a major colonial power. Now, look, let's look at this conclusion, because it's really going to help get the grades up now, okay? Because there's been arguments made on both sides. There's some nice information. There is some precise detail. It could go a bit further, but this is still good. Okay, so in conclusion, it's almost impossible to say that raid on Cadiz was Drake's most significant achievement, despite the fact he made several important contributions to maritime history during the years 1558 to 1588. Focusing on the question. Look at this focus on the question. Going back to those dates, that was good. Whilst the raid was a notable event, it should not be seen as mostly the sum total of Drake's achievements. His role as a privateer, his successful circumnavigation of the world, and other notable expeditions all contribute to his legacy as one of England's most famous mariners. A balanced evaluation of Drake's accomplishment recognises the significance of the raid on Cadiz, but also his other important contributions to English history. Right, now I'll just finish this off. Therefore, I somewhat, okay, or most historians can only somewhat agree that the raid on Cadiz was his greatest achievement. Okay, or you could even mostly disagree, but it's just coming to a final conclusion. What was his greatest achievement? Okay. Bada bing, bada boom. You got a nice answer there. So look, okay. Now, again, this isn't a level 9, but it is a good answer. It is a good answer. So I think it's between kind of 12 and 13. Okay, I would prefer a bit more precise information and a little bit more elaboration. But, you know, for the purposes of today, I didn't want to write loads and loads and loads. It'd be too much for the session. But this is organized well. I mean, it's got some connectors in it. It could have a few more connectors in it. I would have liked to see a bit more mostly, and in the beginning stating whether, you know, you think you kind of mostly or somewhat agree or disagree. But yeah, fundamentally, this is a strong essay, and I hope those skills have been good for you today. And with that, I'm going to finish the session. I'm going to upload this, and I'm going to upload the document for you as well. So thank you for attending, and please let your friends know that I'm recording this, and it will be on YouTube very soon. Thank you and goodbye.